Here at Shenango County 4-H. Now it's been a pretty dry summer. We had a lot of rain in May and then it seems like it dried up quite a bit. We didn't get quite as much. If you're farming out there, grazing, making crops, you might notice that your fields are turning dry. You may not be getting a lot of regrowth because we don't have a lot of moisture. So what we're going to talk about today is water holding capacity, soil porosity, and how that affects how much water is trapped in your soils or there in your soils for your plants so that you get a lot of grass to regrow for grazing or making hay. So we're going to do a simple little science experiment today. What you are going to need is some water, either bottled water out of the tap. You're going to need some drinking cups, 3 of them, no holes in these. You'll need some smaller, wider cups with holes drilled right in the center. Not huge holes, just enough to let our water escape. So you'll need 3 of these. We're going to stack these into our bigger cups. And then you'll need 3 samples of cereal. You're going to want to try this with something a little bit larger like your Cocoa Puffs, something a little bit mid-sized. These are grape nuts. And follow it up with something that is really fine like oatmeal. Now, once you do this experiment, you can actually go outside, dig up some soil, and try it with your soils as well, especially if you have different soils around your farm. So what we're going to do is start with our Cocoa Puffs. Pour them all in or pour some of them in. I'm actually going to save them. I want to do a second type of experiment. Following that, we're going to put our grape nuts in. This is a really cool experiment because this is actually going to show how our water moves, how it travels through our soils. So I'm going to save a little bit of that for my final experiment. And some oatmeal, which is our finer, more densely packed. Whoop! As I spilled it, don't cry over spilled oatmeal. Would cry if I had milk in it, but we'll just sweep this right in. So I threw some big words at you guys when I first started this video. I said organic material. Organic material is like the manure that's put back onto the field. If you decide to take your pasture and you have a lot of weeds or thistles or plants, grass that the cows haven't eaten, you mow that back on, you mow it, bush hog it. Spilling my cereal here. So I threw a lot of big words at you guys when I first started this video. Organic material. Organic material is when you add manure back to your fields to increase the fertility, but you're also adding on that digested feed. You're putting some organic material, the plant material that the animals have eaten, you're putting it back onto your fields, which helps build up the quality of your soil. It adds more organic matter to it so that you don't have a dead soil. Also, if you go through and you bush hog your pastures that the cows haven't eaten, the tops that get dropped back down, that's organic material. If you don't mow and you're long grass grazing and you're having the cows as they go through and they're eating, but they're also pushing those long tops into the soil, they're forcing them in, that's adding organic material. Organic material is great because it helps hold water. It makes our soils springier. It allows the water to go into them. If we have a lot of soils that don't have organic material, they tend to be more compacted. They're harder to walk on. The water just doesn't get into the soil. It doesn't get in between the particles. So soil particles, porosity, is how the soil particles allow water to drain down through as it rains. Do you have a lot of different size particles? Do you have your bigger Cocoa Puffs followed by your grape nuts to allow spaces in between the pieces of soil for that water to go down so it can be stored down further down in the soil for our plants? Also, your hard soils, when it does rain, which I'm hoping it's going to rain soon, when they hit that hard soil, it tends to just run off. It doesn't go inside. We don't have those spaces for that water to come down. Your soil porosity is also affected by your worms and your bugs in your soil. Do you have enough organic material to support that life, underneath the grass to help create those channels for the water to go through. Adding organic material can help bring in the worms and the good insects that create those channels and help our plants grow. So we're going to take a look at water infiltration and see how the different size soil particles work. We're going to use cereal. When we're done with this experiment, if you want to try this on your own, highly suggest going out, taking different soil samples, making sure it's free of the vegetation, kind of peel the grass top off and then dig down. Feel free to have some rocks so you can pull those out as well. It's really interesting to see how rocks affect how the water goes in. So we're going to start by just pouring a little bit of water through our Cocoa Puffs, and we're going to watch it drain. Now, Cocoa Puffs, if we look at it, big particles, lots of air spaces. Our water, which is dripping quite rapidly, is almost out of our hole. It's gone right through. These particles allow the water to move through our soil. Our second sample are grape nuts. They're kind of settling at the bottom. I don't know how well you guys can see this. The water is dripping through. Is it dripping through quite as fast as our Cocoa Puffs? Not really. It's taking a little bit longer. What happened is when the water hit our grape nuts, because they're smaller, they packed, they push down, they cover the hole in our cups. Their porosity isn't allowing the water to move quite as fast through the soil to get down further. Also, with this tighter packing, if it does rain and it's really dry, the water is just going to run right off the top of our soil and won't go down to feed our plants, our hay, and our pastures. So, our oatmeal, which we said was a lot finer when we started, we're going to add the water to that as well. We're going to watch that. Now, if you guys can see, I'll hold this up without knocking everything over. Dripping really, really slow. Watching this drain would be like watching paint dry. It's going to take a while. It'll happen. Will we get as much water as, say, our Cocoa Puffs? Probably not, because the longer this water sits, the more the particles are going to absorb the moisture. It won't travel quite as far down. It won't move quite as far through our soils. That's why having different sized particles, soil particles, having porosity, having enough room for water to move is important to have water in our soils during droughts, times of dryness, just like we have now. So my final experiment that I want to try, we're going to combine all three into a sample and see how the water moves through. Will it be a fast rate like our Cocoa Puffs? Will it be a medium rate like our grape nuts? Or will it be extremely slow like our oatmeal? Stay tuned. All right, to get started for our combined mixture of cereals to see how different size particles work together to drain our water, we're just going to simply take a cup that's dry. I'm going to add my different samples of cereal to my cup, because not everything is a clean cut layer out there if you start digging, especially if you dig horizontally and see the different layers of soil. So we're just going to simply add all of our different cereals to one dry cup. Hand over the top, shake, shake, shake. Get them mixed up. Oh, excuse me. All right, once they're mixed up, we're simply going to add them to one of our cups, put it on top of another cup. I'm going to use the cup that I had my Cocoa Puffs in because it's the cleanest around the hole at the bottom. If you wanted to, you could wash out a different cup and use that. So we're just going to simply pour in, make sure it's kind of level, and add our water to it. Now, as we watch, the water is draining down through our different type of soil particles. A lot of our Cocoa Puffs mixed in, they may not have fallen quite to the bottom. They actually stayed up a little bit higher. The more densely packed granola, grape nuts, and our oatmeal actually formed a thicker layer down at the bottom. They settled around the Cocoa Puffs and left them up towards the top. I don't know if you guys can see this. The water is coming down through. Is it dripping quite as fast as the Cocoa Puffs? No, but definitely faster than the oatmeal itself. We have left those little pores, those little spaces for water to move through our soils. So as it drains, you'll notice that the water isn't crystal clear. It's actually taking some of the color off of our cereal. A lot of soils, when they do get wet, especially if you look at the rivers after a rainstorm, you will notice that they the water churns up a lot of soil, it churns up a lot of dirt. Your water's not crystal clear. That happens too in our pastures and our hay fields. So if you wanted to build a little bit more science into this, you could maybe add some math to it. You could take this out and actually try this on pasture. You could grab some soils squares with the top still on, make it rain through the canopy, the plants, and see how it moves through. If you cut a little square, watch the water move through, see the roots, see the different organisms living inside of your soil. That helps make pastures and hay fields grow. If you enjoyed this activity, feel free to join us on Facebook and our YouTube channel, both under Shenango County 4-H. Have a great day.